The Shipping Podcast with the UK Chamber of Shipping and Lloyds List.
Hello and welcome to the second edition of the Shipping Podcast from the UK Chamber of Shipping and Lloyds List. I'm Jonathan Roberts. In this edition we ask, are the UK's best days as a maritime centre ahead of it or behind it? With Lloyds List soon to launch its list of the top 100 container ports in the world, what does port growth tell us about the state of the global economy? And with the crisis at the port of Calais showing no signs of abating, what are the long-term solutions? And joining me in the studio are Guy Platten, the Chief Executive of the UK Chamber of Shipping, and Janet Porter, the Container Shipping Editor at Lloyds List. So, London International Shipping Week is just around the corner, and the great and the good of the global industry will be descending upon the UK to attend some of the 100 events the week has to offer. But with the red ensign having dropped by a third in the last 5 years and emerging competition from overseas, are the UK's best days as a maritime power ahead of it or behind it? Guy Platten.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think we're still very much a global maritime power, and this is evidenced by LASW, which we've got people from all around the world are coming to London for a week of a huge number of events, a huge number of things going on, which just shows that we're still relevant, and London and the UK is still a great place to do maritime business.
And what is it, do you think, that the UK has to offer that gives it the edge?
I think it's what we refer to as the maritime cluster effect. So you've got ship owners, you've got ship managers, you've got classification societies, you've got the law firms, the accountancy firms, the P&I clubs, insurance, everything's on the doorstep. And in fact, just to give you an example, I recently met with one ship owner and he'd moved up from Monaco. I said, why did you come to London? Because, Monaco, you would like to think, has got a slightly better climate than London. And the answer was because everything's on his doorstep. He can go and see everybody, so he can do his business. And not just that, he's got a great pool of talent. He's fishing from a much larger pool, so he can get the skills he needs to be able to run his business effectively.
Janet Porter, you've travelled the world with work. You've been to all these great maritime powers, I think, pretty much now. Do you think that we in the UK talk about the UK slightly differently to how everybody else talks about us? Or does the world still, in your experience, look to London and look to the UK?
I think they see London as a big maritime centre as far as professional services are concerned. But my own view is that without a big homegrown ship owner at the hub, there is, or the centre, there is something missing. We don't have a P&O, as in other countries. They do have big ship owners that I can identify with, and I think that's a loss.
And what do you think can be done about that?
I don't think anything can be done now. I don't think we will have that. We will have a lot of ship owners based in London, but we don't have one that's like a global brand. We did have P&O, we don't have a global brand, we don't have a Maersk, we don't have a CMA CGM or an Evergreen, and I think that would be a loss of skills because people don't see shipping so much. It's not so visible. So I think we've lost some of that visibility in the industry because of that loss of a big ship owner at its heart.
I would agree there's no large UK ship owning company, or the ones at least the public perhaps have heard of, but actually there's some really good ship owners coming through now, some younger ship owners who are British. I was with one last week and they've grown from one ship 10 years ago to over 20 ships now. So they're, perhaps the people that think of the past, that's gone, but maybe looking to the future. And, the good thing I think now is that government is starting to take notice that the UK Maritime Centre is perhaps at a threat. And so with industry, looked at what makes London tick, what makes the UK tick maritime-wise. And I think that partnership with government, that understanding, will help create the environment so that those big ship-owning companies can emerge once again.
No, I think that's very exciting. If we do have several new companies starting up, we know how quickly a small company can become a global one. And so if we've got that entrepreneurial spirit, which I think you've spoken about in the past, Jonathan, that's great. But I feel we are going to lose some skills at the moment without somebody producing them and, doing all the training, which a big company would have done in the past.
I think training side of it, yeah, indeed. That's one of the attractions of the UK. We've got a big skilled workforce and we do need to make sure that continues into the future. So we need to train people to go away to sea, to get those qualifications, to go through the system and then come and work ashore. I think that's absolutely right, and we can do more there, I feel.
Janet, is it your view then that you were talking about professional services, that if you don't have that ship-owning base in the UK and that cluster that Guy was talking about, the insurance, the shipbroking, the finance, the legal, eventually would come under threat?
No, I think it will still work. I think we still have massive skills in the professional and the financial services side. But I think it would be that much better. Maybe it would just be the icing on the cake if we had a proper big ship owner at the centre of it all.
And to have a true maritime cluster, I guess to have a maritime cluster, ship owning is a core part of that. And talking of ship owning, Guy Platten, the red ensign, the UK flag, has suffered a sharp drop over the last 5 years. Since the introduction of the tonnage tax in the year 2000, the flag grew, the shipping industry in the UK grew. We've seen a bit of a loss of that in the last 5 years. Why is that, and what can be done about it?
It's an interesting question you pose there. Of course, tonnage tax is what we call flag blind. So to benefit from tonnage tax, you don't have to fly the red ensign. So it's a matter of choice for owners which flag they want to fly. And there's no doubt about it that the whole world of registration has changed over the last few years, with the perhaps flags which were known as flag of convenience. They've really upped their game, and they're quality flags now. And by interviewing ship owners, looking at trying to find out why we've declined, it does seem to come down to sort of the service being offered, the quality of the flag as well, and that those two things go hand in hand in a strong flag. You inherently feel, though, and I think that's probably the nub of it, if you have a strong flag, you've got more say as your credentials as a strong maritime nation. So we've got to look to see how we can arrest that decline and actually get our flag to grow again. And I think that's possible.
So you do think it matters to you? Because I think this is one of the debate. Do we really need a flag? What does it bring to the table? It doesn't earn much revenue for the country, does it? It's more a prestige thing than income. And there isn't this link. There isn't a link often between the ship owners and the country. So is it going to make any difference, do you think?
From the research that I've looked into, I think there's an inherent value to the brand value of the red ensign. And I think if ship owners are going to put their ships under the red ensign, you've got more of a chance they're going to base their businesses here in the UK. So I think there's a real marketing thing which goes along with that. So, yeah, I think there is. But also, of course, the more ships you have under a flag, the bigger voice you've got in IMO, and the more you're able to influence regulation, which affects us all.
So I've seen the report and the proposals. I mean, do you agree that it was good if it was the flag that was actually spun off, separated and given more autonomy from the MCA, so that you really can promote it and be more commercial and more customer friendly? I think that's the only way it can work. It really can. It has to have that commercial focus. Everyone else has modernised and changed. It's got to be seen as a partner with ship owners and not as purely as the regulator. And I think it's changing that mindset. I mean, the owners want quality flags. They want to be held to account. But they need to work in partnership with the flag state. And that's what really needs to change. And by commercialising it in the sense of making it much more agile, that's the answer. And perhaps that way is to make it a bit more arm's length from government. And that's what we're really recommending within the report.
And I guess you need a leader, you need the wider leadership from government, from the agencies that are responsible. Here in the UK, it's the Maritime Coast Guard Agency, to take the lead on that commerciality, to have a commercial mindset as opposed to a government civil service mindset. And
yes, absolutely. You have to have that commercial mindset, and you really need to have that deep understanding that shipping is a 24/7, 365 business, and that ship owners will move if they need to for commercial reasons, and you need to be able to go and sell it and to champion. So absolutely, it needs that whole mindset within the ship register, and if we can get all of that, then I believe firmly that we can grow that flag again, and I believe that will have spin-off benefits for the whole maritime cluster.
Because that's exactly what Maurice Story was he succeeded in doing when he took over as the CEO of the MCA probably about 10 years ago, and he did make it more commercial. He turned the corner, it started to grow, and we've lost a lot of those gains now over the last few years, haven't we? So you think they can be won back? I
think so. I think we're not in terminal decline. I think it has declined. It's an absolute wake-up call. I mean, it's up to the government in the end how they organise it. What we've laid out from an industry point of view is, yes, it's possible. Yes, you can. And there is a huge amount of goodwill out there, and owners would come back to the flag if the conditions were right.
And you need almost like a high-profile CEO to lead it.
You certainly need looking at that side of it.
Drive.
Absolutely, get that marketing, get out there, and actually go to. You've mentioned Maurice Story, of course. He brought quite a few big ship-owning companies into the UK, and have now based themselves here. So, by having that absolutely focused drive to go and to attract people and not be afraid to knock on doors and show the benefits of the flag, I think it will benefit the whole cluster effect.
It's got to have a proper marketing budget, because I was talking to somebody within the ship register a few weeks ago who said they haven't been able to do any proper marketing or promotion or anything like that. So the government has got to be made aware that you do need to put work and effort into it.
Yeah, you've got to speculate to accumulate, and you've got to be able to have that marketing budget. You've got to be able to go abroad, and you've got to be able to perhaps entertain people. That's how shipping does business. We sort of talk to each other, we network, and unless you're able to do that, then you're never going to win.
So what do you think the Red Ensign can offer? What are the pluses to the global shipping community?
Red Ensign is a strong maritime heritage. I think we've still got a lot of influence at IMO. I think we've got in terms of the UK as a whole, we've got a stable democracy. And that sort of thing, it all adds to the mix of it all. And I think that's really important.
So you've got political stability, I guess. You've got economic stability. You've got competitive tax regimes. You've got a strong skills base. And I guess we talked about it before on this programme and elsewhere about using your maritime heritage to create a maritime future. And if you've got a stable regime that with a trustworthy brand, then you can grow something from that. But there's something else I want to touch upon as well. And you were talking, Guy, at the beginning of the programme about London International Shipping Week, and the real focus of LISW this year is about thought leadership for the future. What does the shipping industry look like in 2030, 2040, 2050? And isn't there something to the idea of that strong maritime cluster where we've got a lot of everything, where people are competing against each other, competing against their neighbours, quite literally in the city, where it drives new ideas. People are competing against each other to drive their own businesses forward. It creates an internal competitive edge that ultimately creates a maritime cluster that is, even in some occasions, greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the events at LISW are really going to hammer that point home. We got the main centrepiece as a conference on the Thursday, and we're really looking for some good thought leadership to come out of that. Some really interesting sessions there, looking at the world economy, looking at how shipping is changing and evolving. We're getting the national, the supranational, the regional governments all together to have a good debate as to what is the role of each one. And I think that's that thought leadership. Where does the IMO fit into it? Where does the EU fit into it? Where does national authorities fit into the whole jigsaw of regulation? Because we are a regulated industry. So that's an important component. And then we're also, part of that conference, looking at the future in terms of future innovation, technology, and actually the future of business in the shipping, how shipping business is evolving and will changing, so we can have an idea that in 10 years' time, does the picture look like? So to me, that's all part of that thought leadership. That's all part of that maritime cluster, which is the UK.
And I think one of the most interesting things is Lloyd's Register moving down to the Southampton University campus, where you've got the opportunity to really cross-fertilise ideas between the academic and the engineers, and that that whole marine engineering cluster is another exciting development, I think, for Britain.
This is a really good point, isn't it? Because we were saying the question that we originally posed at the beginning of this conversation was about the UK being a maritime centre. Naturally, the focus will end up being talking a little bit about London, but you've got, as you say, Southampton Port, a huge investment recently, as well as the London Gateway. You've got Felixstowe, a major container port, and we'll be talking about containers in a moment or two. Up in Scotland, you've got a really strong emerging maritime centre there as well. You've got Liverpool investing in their ports. It is a maritime nation, isn't it? It's not just about London.
No, I think there's a lot of really exciting things going on. I think Liverpool is a brilliant example, because a lot of people just think Liverpool is a dead port. Nothing much is happening there, but in fact it's very exciting. They're building this new terminal, which they hope will be able to attract. They have no guarantees, but they'll hope they'll be able to attract much bigger container ships. A lot of the container lines now run their UK businesses from Liverpool, so you've still got that maritime heritage there, and it's really thriving. But a lot of this does go below the radar in the country, further afield. I think it'd be great if you could really raise the profile. I know this is always one of the big topics, how do you make people aware that we still got a shipping industry. But there's a lot of exciting things going on, I'm saying Southampton, London Gateway rather, Felixstowe, Liverpool and beyond. And you've got all the training facilities, educational institutes as well. Huge training goes on here.
And City of Glasgow College, of course, soon to open a maritime wing, big investment going on in their skills and training there. We're going to just complete this section of the discussion now, but Lloyds List, you're heavily involved in London International Shipping Week yourself, aren't you?
Yes, we're having an event actually ourselves, so we're going to be having an event on the first day because Lloyds List is going to actually start publishing a monthly magazine again.
Hooray!
Wow,
Yes.
that's brilliant.
So it will be a little bit more like The Economist, a lot of opinion pieces. It will be not, and it's actually still going to try to drive traffic onto the website. So we haven't abandoned digital at all.
No, sure.
But it will have something in print that people can see, the overviews, a bit more analysis and in-depth features, that sort of thing.
That's brilliant. I think a lot of people would be very happy to see a Lloyds List coming back in one format or another in print. And of course, the UK Chamber of Shipping have got a variety of events on the European Union and on other issues as well.
Yeah, we've got. I think there's so much going on during that week. I mean, just from the UK Chamber of Shipping, we've got an EU debate on the Monday evening. Brexit, is it a good thing or bad thing for business? And got some really interesting speakers at that event from ship owners and real political commentators. So we're hoping it'll be a lively debate. We're introducing some guidance to do with the Bribery Act. We're quite unique amongst Western nations in our Bribery Act and how do ship owners operate in that environment. So hopefully some guidance there, and that's an event there. And also about the future, about the seafarers of tomorrow. And we've got a great event, which is with the Merchant Navy Training Board, focusing and showcasing that. And, that's just a snapshot of just a few of the things going on that week.
So they're all part of over 100 events as part of London International Shipping Week in 2015. You can find out more at londoninternationalshippingweek.com. You can follow them on Twitter at LISW15. So, with Lloyds List soon to launch its list of the top 100 container ports in the world, what does port growth tell us about the state of the global economy? Janet Porter.
We bring out this report every year. It is a league table of the top 100 or maybe the top 105 container ports in terms of volume, but it tells us a lot more than just who's number one and who's number 100. It really does show us the different trends and how the global trade patterns are changing. Not surprisingly, we're still completing the numbers. It'll be coming out at the end of this month, so it's not absolutely finalised yet. But, the big, strong growth areas are, as you'd expect, in China, the intra-Asia trades. It also shows where markets aren't doing so well. So Northern Europe is not doing so well. North America, for all sorts of reasons, partly because of all the West Coast disruption last year, their ports are not doing as well, or didn't do as well in 2014 in terms of volume. But it shows us much more than that. And I think next year's is going to be particularly interesting because there are all these sort of changing dynamics. You've got the expanded Suez Canal has just opened. Next year we'll have the Panama Canal, the new Panama Canal locks. So those are both going to have a big change on global trading patterns. But I think it's the port volumes that will show that first of all. And you can pick up these trends. You can see what's doing well, what's not doing so well. West Africa is a big growth market at the moment. The Mediterranean transshipment ports are doing well. Anything to do with Russia is doing very, very badly. So it shows us you can pick up a lot of trends from this, and hopefully within I think comes out at the end of the month. You'll be able to see who were the winners and losers.
I hear that Piraeus has had some spectacular growth in the last year or so. Is that right?
It has, surprisingly. It's I think obviously you've got the Chinese investing there and they're doing a lot of transshipment. So despite everything we hear about Greece, there does seem to be one good news story there. The other ports which are doing well are the UK ports because the economy is doing well, so we're importing more. We just got some very positive numbers from both Felixstowe and Southampton. So that's the bright spot within a rather disappointing Northern Europe overall, I would say.
But with all this, just being UK-centric just for a second, I know it's a global report, but is there a danger of getting too much capacity in the UK? You've got the Thames Gateway, and you've got all the developments, Felixstowe, Southampton, Liverpool, and all the rest of it. Is there? I mean, we've got quite a unique port model, haven't we, here in the UK?
I think there is a danger of having too much. I mean, the volumes will still go up. It doesn't mean to say you haven't got more capacity than you need. And obviously, you have got a lot of investment. That's a free market for you and competition. So, yes, I mean, London Gateway is handling just a relatively small amount. I don't know what the volumes are, but they've got massive capacity there. Liverpool will come on stream next year, a lot more new capacity. So yes, there is surplus capacity without a doubt.
And there's some fairly healthy export figures coming out of the UK as well. They're slowly improving. Governments putting a lot into trying to export more as a country. I guess that can help as well.
I don't know if we see so much of that in the volumes. Remember, all this is volume and not value.
Right.
And I don't think in terms of container exports, I don't think it's great. I don't know that. Right. I'm not sure. But traditionally, a lot of the containerised exports from any developed country are low-value stuff, a lot of waste paper, that sort of thing.
Because you were talking about everything that we've been hearing about Greece recently. We also keep hearing about how allegedly China's economy is beginning to slow, or it will slow at some point. What would the impact of that be? Because we've gotten very used to, especially in Northern Europe, hearing about how all of our imports are coming from China. What's the impact of that going to be?
Two ways of looking at that. If China is exporting less, then presumably we're importing less, although individually that's not necessarily true. But overall, and in container shipping, which is what we're talking about here, there are two big trade routes. There's Asia to Europe and Asia to North America. And these huge big ships now coming on stream are for the Asia-Europe trades. So they've got massive ships. They can take 20,000 containers, and there's too much capacity. So the freight rates are absolutely rock bottom. You can ship a container from Asia to Europe for a few $100s at the moment. And it's a price war. It's a continual price war. So that's one of the, whether that's because of slack demand or, less coming out of China. But either way, the container lines have got this incredible sort of dilemma between massive new ships to get the economies of scale down because the prices are going down and down and down.
How do you think it'll end?
I don't know. It's possible that some people will eventually pull out of the market, but people have been saying that for ages. It never seems to happen. Everyone talks about consolidation. It doesn't really happen. We've had a little bit of consolidation. There is one big global line at the moment that supposedly is on the market, but it's hard to see quite how it is going to end unless some of the smaller players just decide they've had enough. But some of those smaller players have state interests, so it's not a simple commercial decision.
Mm-hmm. And we've, of course, got the big international news recently, the Suez Canal extension. What do we think this is going to do? Is it going to speed traffic up? Is it going to have a significant impact, or is it just going to be irrelevant, as some people have said?
It won't necessarily speed things up because ships are still slow steaming, even though fuel prices are low, because they've got too many ships. If you go slowly, you have more ships in a loop, and it helps to absorb capacity. I personally think the big winners of this will be the US in one form or another, because to get cargo from China or Asia to the US, you can go across the Pacific to the west coast, across the Pacific through the Panama Canal to the east coast, or through the Suez Canal to the east coast. And a lot more is now going through the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal now handles more going from Asia to the US than the Panama Canal. And the Panama Canal can only handle small ships at the moment. Next year they'll be able to handle bigger ships when the new locks open. I have no idea how it's going to play out, but there are a lot of alternatives now. Both the container lines and their customers can start really playing off one route against the other, ports on the west coast of the US against the east coast, and the two canals, how the tolls will be fixed. So there's a lot of dynamics here, and I think the Panama Canal, when it opens next year, that will provide another alternative. But how it will all finish, I have no idea.
And that must be good. Competition is good, particularly when it comes to canal tolls, I think.
It's good for the consumer, at the end of the day. But I think it's the American consumers rather than Europeans, because basically those big ships already come through the Suez Canal to Europe. But it will open up more alternatives, I think, for the US East Coast.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now, on to the final question that we've got today. This summer has seen a huge rise in problems at the port of Calais. We've got thousands of migrants continuing to camp outside the port, often attempting to force their way onto ferries via lorries and cars. Tension's been rising between the British and French governments as a result. With the crisis showing no signs of abating, what are the long-term solutions, Guy?
Well, it's a very, very complex issue. I mean, some of the tragedies you're seeing now, I mean, as a human being, you do look at that sort of thing. But really, at the moment, there's sort of three factors which are coming together, which is making the whole situation seem much worse. Firstly, we're at the peak summer season, so you've got millions of UK families going away on holiday, using the ports. Of course, along with the normal freight lorries and the like. You've got the migrant issues at Calais. You've got all of that happening. Got lots of people camped outside trying to gain access. They seem to have switched their attention away from the port just at the moment and focusing on the Channel Tunnel. But of course that disrupts the traffic there, which then backs up onto the ferries and the like. And you've also had the My Ferry link when that finished, and there was strikes and blockades at Calais as well, which massively disrupted the travel plans, massively interrupt the businesses of the other ferry companies which are going about their business. So all these things coming together, what the solution is, though, is really for the governments to take responsibility. They have to tackle the whole the root cause of the crisis, and it's not good enough to get hold of the migrants when they transgress it or trespass and then literally release them back into the countryside or a few hundred yards down the road. I mean, that's ridiculous, because all they do is people come and try again, and you can build bigger and higher and fences, but eventually people will just keep trying and trying and trying. So really the solution is you've got to tackle the migrant issue, and we've got to keep the trade flowing.
Janet Potter, the guy's right, surely, isn't he? This is a geopolitical issue at its root. Building a bigger fence isn't going to work. Surely it's the French government's responsibility primarily to either put migrants into the asylum system or return them to the country of origin.
Yes, I mean, I agree with Guy that you've got to tackle the problem at the root cause. But right now there are 5,000 people living rough in Calais, which I think is disgraceful for anywhere in Northern Europe. I think that both the British and the French governments got to work together. Possibly, this is not a maritime solution I'm about to put forward, but at least there must be some disused airbase or somewhere in northern France where you can build a proper camp. They're properly housed and fed and given proper sanitation, properly processed, but not just left to live rough.
Isn't right that people need to be processed? I mean, they're stateless at the moment.
Mm.
They're outside. They're not. No one actually does process them. There's a deliberate attempt not to, because my understanding is that once you process, that's them claiming asylum in that particular country, and they don't want to happen. So
they can't claim asylum again in another country once you're into the system of one country's asylum regime. You can't move into another and claim asylum there. But this has affected hundreds of millions of pounds worth of trade between the UK and Europe. About £90 billion of trade goes through Dover alone every year. Of course, it's right, surely, that the two governments, and French and British governments, have to work together better. But it just seems a bit like it's a bit summer holiday, silly season tit for tat at the moment. The Calais mayor is constantly blaming the UK government. The UK government, other than building a big fence, is kind of washing its hands a little bit.
Sorry, that's the trouble. You're painting in that sort of light, and you're right. It's the silly seas, and the politicians need to be seen to be doing something. At the end of the heart of this, though, is a human tragedy. That's what needs to be addressed, and that human tragedy has also got the effect of, from an economic point of view, affecting hundreds of millions of pounds worth of trade. And that has got to be tackled, and you can't. There's no easy solutions. There's no build a bigger fence, send more security police, send sniffer dogs. All these stories which are going around the press. They just tackle some of the symptoms.
There's no proactive solution being put forward at all. And I think we have to accept that it is a British and a French problem at the moment, because it's our trade, it's our traffic. OK, they're on French soil, but I think it's stupid to say it's their problem. It's our problem. And I think we should see that it's a humanitarian problem and try to begin there. Those 5,000 or however many it is now, they're there. So even if we start trying to sort things out in the Middle East or wherever they're coming from, those 5,000 have got to be sorted out. They can't just keep living there forever. And they can't keep risking their lives every night. They've got to be properly cared for, I think. Then you decide what to do next. I don't know the answer. I just don't think the answer is letting them just sleep rough and risk their lives every night. And
of course, they're coming here for many reasons. It's impossible to guess really what those reasons are. I guess some of it is to do with genuine economic migration. Some of it is to do with asylum. Maybe some of it is to do with not wanting to be. Some of them don't want to be officially enrolled in the system. It's quite possible they want to be hidden in the hidden economy.
I'm sure they do, but I think this is why they do have to be properly processed in one form or another, whether they want to or not. They're here. They want to get into the UK. Therefore, they've got to go through a certain system. But let's do it in a humanitarian way.
But I also think that you're right, but also the EU's got a role to play here.
Of course.
Because they seem to be taking a step backwards or a step away from the whole problem. Their job under the treaty obligations is to enforce freedom of trade. That part of that, enforcing that, is going to have to make sure governments come together to solve this problem with the migrant issue, because that is what's stopping the freedom of trade.
I think we should be helping out Greece and Italy. I mean, Greece is in a terrible way, and yet they're having to tackle so many migrants just turning up on their islands, and it's just actually not fair. I think we're all in this together.
And it is one of the founding principles about the European Union is the free movement of people. And we know that's been a big political issue here in the UK for some time. But across mainland Europe, for the vast majority, there is the Schengen Agreement. You can move as a person, you can move from country to country without having to show any kind of official documentation. Are we at a point now where that is a fundamental part of the problem? Because if you can cross a border into any European Union member state, there is virtually nothing to stop you from going anywhere across a massive continent. Is the Schengen Agreement failed?
It may have failed, but I mean, it's not. It's maybe part of the problem, but it's not the problem. The real problem is in the Middle East or North Africa or countries that have failed, and people are just desperate to get out. So, okay, once they get here, maybe there's a secondary problem. And again, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know whether we can suddenly start putting up borders between EU countries. But those people are now here in the EU. I think it's an EU responsibility.
So then do we have to accept that the only solution will be very long term, and that will be in capacity building, in nation building, essentially, in Africa and parts of the Middle East? And until then, all we can do is try to mitigate the problem with trying to give people a human standard of living, a reasonable standard of living in asylum camps.
Sadly, I think you're right, Jonathan. I think until, and it is a long-term solution. Otherwise, we're just dealing with the symptoms of this. And there's economic migrancy. There's people, who are under threat and under reigns of terror. And until we get the stability back in these countries, and there is a bit of nation building, that will actually get a long-term solution to this.
Well, that's really interesting stuff. All that's left is for me to thank my guests, Guy Platten and Janet Porter. You can follow the UK Chamber of Shipping on Twitter @UK Shipping. And you can follow Lloyd's List @Lloyd's List. Thanks for listening. Please do join us again next time.